Hello there, peoples, and the day has finally come. We have finally gotten the BTL-B preview released by FFG, and this was something I was expecting last week, but it didn't happen, and I was expecting it actually yesterday, because I'm recording this the day this article came out, but we didn't get it yesterday, but thankfully we got it this morning. There's some exciting stuff in here because personally, even though I'm more of a Separatist fanboy compared to the Republic, or that made no sense, but whatever. I like Separatist more than Republic, but this actually looks more exciting. So let's just dive straight into things. If I can find my mouse, there we go. It just helps me keep track of things. So starting off, we have a look at the dial. We've already seen this, but this is a big problem with the BTL-B in that it only has two blue maneuvers innately, those being the 1 and the 2 straight, compared to the BTL-A4, which has the 1 Banks is blue as well. Other than that, the dial is the same, but I would not be surprised if you see a lot of BTL-Bs, or at least most of them, with an R2 or R4 astromech, since this thankfully is a small ship. So it's going to be interesting to see how this dial plays out, and if people are going to be willing to fly it without an R4 astromech, or if they're willing to pay those points for the R4 astromech. But we'll see how things pan out. Now, some may not want it, but something like Anakin, maybe he wants it, maybe he doesn't. He has the exact same ability as his Delta 7 form, which is after you fully execute a maneuver, if there's an enemy ship in your front arc at range 0 to 1 or in your bullseye arc, you can spend a force charge to remove a stress token. And other than that, we see some stuff we've already seen for the BTL-B. We knew it was 2 attack, 1 agility, 5 hull, 3 shields. Anakin's got his 3 force charges like normal. We knew the action bar was focus, target lock, barrel roll, or red barrel roll, red reload. And then we knew the plated hull ability, which allows you to change a crit to a hit if you are not critically damaged. So not really too much here we haven't seen. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how his ability plays out on a bomber instead of an interceptor, because the Delta 7, you can mess around with like fine controls and stuff and just jump around all over the place to take advantage of your ability. But with a bomber, you don't have those options, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the end. Moving on, we have a couple of new force powers. Now, we knew what these were called thanks to the card packs, or specifically, I think it was Hotshots and Aces that showed us the names of these, but we didn't know what they did. So we have precognitive reflexes, which allows you to spend a force charge after you reveal your dial to perform a barrel roll or boost, similar to supernatural natural reflexes, I can speak. But that if you don't have the boost or barrel roll action on your action bar and you performed one of those, you gain a strain token, and it essentially becomes your action for the turn. So you get to spend a force charge to potentially do an action that isn't on your bar. So it's interesting. So if you already have boost or barrel roll, you don't really need this. But actually you might need this because this is after you reveal your dial, not after you execute your maneuver. And supernatural reflexes is, I believe, before you execute your maneuver. I'm going to look that up here quickly, but I'm going to keep talking about this. But the fact that this just gives you that utility is always a nice thing, just because, again, you never want to go flying into rocks, and having this on hand is nice to essentially perform your action beforehand. So this is sort of like a combination of supernatural reflexes and advanced sensors, I can speak. Okay, so supernatural reflexes is before you activate, which is right before you reveal your dial. So supernatural reflexes, you do it before you reveal your dial. Precognitive reflexes is after you reveal your dial. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of these plays out, because supernatural reflexes, you suffer damage if you don't have the action bar. Precognitive, you suffer strain and you can't perform an action later on. So there's definitely pros and cons between the two, and it's really just going to be a battle of which penalties are you willing to accept. And then we also have this new Foresight, Foresight power, which is a snapshot from your bullseye arc, but it can be used at range 1 to 3, because snapshot is range 2, but it's your entire front arc. This is 1 to 3, but it's your bullseye arc, and you have to spend a force charge to do it, but you also get to change a focus to a hit. So is this going to replace snapshot? Absolutely not, because not every pilot is force sensitive. But for the ones that are force sensitive, especially on like a Delta 7 or maybe Luke, not Luke, Vader, just more agile force sensitive ships are really going to get a kick out of this, just because, again, they have those options to line up their bullseye arc. So this I really like, and it Foresight especially, and as well as precognitive reflexes, are definitely going to hopefully help people start to move away from only including a force power if it's hate, and maybe experimenting with some other things, so, or supernatural reflexes, because really those are the only two force powers that see play right now. So precognitive reflexes and foresight probably are going to have a place in the game. Moving on, we have C-110P, and if you know your Star Wars Rebels lore, you'll know that this is the Clone Wars version of Chopper, and this is an interesting card. So it's a dual card. You equip his regular side face up, and after you execute a maneuver, you can spend a charge to perform a red evade action while you're stressed. But if you have 0 charges during the end phase, you flip the card over, and then after you execute a maneuver, you have to choose a ship at range 0 to 1, and it gains a jam token. And if there's no other ships around you, just for anyone who's not familiar with the wording on this, nobody's around you, you have to take the jam token on the ship that Chopper is equipped on, which can be a pain in the rear, but if you can stack calculate tokens or something, maybe you can get away with it, and there's actually a way to stack calculate tokens, which we'll get into later. So this is definitely interesting. And speaking of interesting, we have another new pilot, Matchstick, and his ability is while you perform a primary attack or turret attack, you may reroll 1 attack die for each red token you have. Now, I haven't been able to find a way to get multiple tokens. Actually, there is a way. We'll come back to that later. So the best way I've found is to attach Chopper to Matchstick, perform a red maneuver, then spend a charge to perform a red evade action, and then using another card we'll look at later, eventually later on perform a red focus action, and then you have 3 tokens, and then you have 3 dice to roll. But that isn't exactly consistent because Chopper is only 2 charges, and they don't regen, so that's a problem. And moving on, we have Oddball again. It's similar to Anakin. It's going to be interesting to see how his ability plays out on a bomber instead of a fighter, because with the V-19, that was at least somewhat agile. With a bomber, you don't really have that, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And the third card that I mentioned that'll help Matchstick out, it is Ahsoka's Gunner form. So she gives you +1 or a force charge, and after you execute a maneuver, you may spend a force charge to choose a friendly ship at range 1 to 3 in your firing arc. If you do, you may perform a red focus action even while stressed. And this definitely helps, like, at least with some action economy, and it also helps Matchstick gain those red tokens to help make sure that he can fire off his ability. But really, probably the best use for this is just going to be throwing it on maybe like an Arc 1, maybe like Sinker or something, just so that way you can have like a fighter screen of V-19s fly ahead and then just use Ahsoka to pass out focus tokens if necessary. And this isn't too strange for Ahsoka in the game because her pilot ability actually is a similar ability, except it can be anywhere around her, but it has to be at range 0 to 1, and it can be any action. So this is a little more limited, but you have much more range to do it with. So definitely an interesting gunner there. Moving on, we have a R2 as a pilot for the Y-Wing. So it gives you a calculate token if there is an enemy in your rear arc at the start of the engagement phase. So that's definitely an interesting effect and creates a unique anti-pursuit ship, which you really don't want to do with bombers. You don't want to try to get somebody to start chasing you from behind. With R2, you can kind of get away with that because you could throw a dorsal turret shot behind you. And as you can see here, it's possible to get 3 calculate tokens because you can bring C-3PO on as a crew member, which it's going to be interesting to see how the BTL-B's upgrade bar plays out, if it has an astromech, a crew, and a gunner slot similar to the ARC 170, or if it's going to have some weird gunner or crew option. We'll see how that plays out. It gives you the calculate action. You have the advanced droid brain ability that all the IG characters have, which gives you an extra calculate token after performing a calculate action, and it lets you re-roll a defense die if you're calculating. So definitely an interesting crew, and this obviously now brings 3PO into 3 factions, and honestly, I think this is the best out of the 3 of them. So definitely an interesting thing right there. Could create a nice situation where you can get R2 to kind of have somebody chase them and then come in with like a Delta 7 or something to pick off whatever was chasing R2, and just have that option or that defensibility with 3PO and that horde of calculate tokens. So pretty decent pilot. The pilot skill 2 is kind of annoying, but what do you expect from an astromech? So Moving on, obviously the Y-Wing is a bomber, so you're going to possibly be carrying some bombs and mines. And Goji is a pilot who actually really loves to take advantage of that because his ability reads, while a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 defends, it may roll 1 additional defense die for each friendly bomb or mine at range 0 to 1 of it. Now, at first glance, this doesn't seem too decent because bombs explode after you drop them, unless you're playing NIM. And the only mines we have are counter nets and proximity mines, which really don't cover that much area in the grand scheme of things. But then I remember two things. One, delayed fuses exist, so you can sort of fuse off mines. And two, cluster mines are coming back. So as soon as I realized that, my first thought was run like 4 BTL-Bs, 3 of them like maybe Red Squadron bombers, and 1 of them being Goji, and give them all cluster mines, and then just have mines all over the field. And as long as Goji can, or as long as the other bombers can stay near the mines and Goji can stay nearby, it is going to be hilarious just to be able to roll possibly 3 additional dice just because cluster mines. So that is a really fun pilot, and I honestly think that could be probably going to be one of the better pilots out of the expansion if people can learn to drop cluster mines correctly. So that is definitely the one I'm most excited for. But I am also excited for the last unique, but I'll show you the Red Squadron Bomber here quickly. It's just a PS2 generic. So like 3 of these in Goji could be fun, but we'll have to wait and see what the points look like on them. But for that final unique pilot, we have Broadside, who, when he performs a turret attack, if the turret indicator is in either of his side arcs, he can change a blank to a focus result. Now, this encourages a sort of living on the edge play style, as I call it, where you set up on one side of the board and then just circle around the edge of the board. Now, we've seen this before with like the Jump Master in first edition, since its left-facing maneuvers were innately better than its right-facing maneuvers. So what you would do is you would set up a Jump Master on the right side of the board and then circle around the edge of the board, always firing to your left. Broadside is going to encourage a very similar playstyle, and I honestly think that that is going to make him so good if you have a dorsal turret on hand, or maybe just any turret, just having that support on the outside. And if they want to go after him, they kind of have to break off in order to chase him, and then you can send your other fighters in to deal with whatever was chasing Broadside. So absolutely in love with this new with Broadside. So Broadside and Goji are easily my favorite 2 of the new uniques. Matchstick and R2 are okay, but their applications are kind of limited, and you got to kind of learn how to fly them correctly. Whereas Goji also is like that, but his is a little more obvious if you take a few seconds to think about what cluster mines, or what mines in general you have to you that can really help with this. And then Broadside, again, just encourages that unique strategy of flying on the outside of the board and splitting up your forces and forcing your opponent to multitask. So overall, I am actually, like I said at the beginning, I'm liking the BTL-B a lot more than the Nantex. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. So that'll do it for this video. Right now, I am actually working on, I have no battle reports scheduled right now, but I am working on some Armada Clone Wars speculation, and sometime in the next few days, or next couple of days, excuse me, you could probably expect my reaction to an analysis to the new Warhammer reveals that are happening at the Nova Open tonight. So that's really all I have to say for updates on the channel and everything that we had to discuss with the BTL-B Y-Wing today. So hopefully you enjoyed what you see here today, and I'll see you in whatever the next video is.